Before I start this video, I do want to say I sincerely apologize for not making anything anywhere for the last like 2, almost 3 weeks. I've just kind of been doing other stuff and enjoying life, trying not to be like chronically online, I suppose. And I've been having a good time, so yeah, I apologize. I'm more or less just doing this because I think it's really fun and enjoyable, and I don't want to kind of burn myself out on it and do it because it's something like I'm obligated to do. I just want to do it because it's fun. And the same goes for streaming too. A few weeks ago, I streamed Nobody Wants to Die, the Critical Games debut game. I must say, for a debut game, it's pretty good. I did have a decent time with it, but I'm kind of at odds with it, if I'm being honest. There was a lot in the game that I really didn't know how to feel about, and yeah, it really, there was a lot of stuff that really bogged down the experience, and I wanted to make a video right after I played it, but I obviously didn't do that, but I'm getting to it now, so I just kind of want to like give my thoughts on it a bit, what I think about it, talk about what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. Now, I do want to start with the good, because there is some good in this game that I think they absolutely fucking nailed. And one of those was just the story as a whole. I think the premise and idea they had was fucking really good. I really enjoyed the story outside of the detective work, which I'll get to in a second. But the story, I won't dive into it because I'm fucking shit at explaining stories. You'd be better off just reading like a 2-paragraph wiki explanation on it. But the story for the most part is really fucking good. There is a few points, especially towards the end, where you have a really big climactic moment, and then it just kind of teeters off. And it really, there's a point at the very end of the game, within the last like hour and a half, so it's really honestly not that big of a deal. This game's only like 6 hours long, but at the very end of the game, within that like last hour and a half or so, there is a moment where the game really feels like it should be ending, and I think it actually would have almost been better if it had ended there, but it didn't, and it just kind of like kept going on after that. And what happened after that was pretty interesting, I'll admit. Like, it was decently interesting, but it was just so weird because I don't know, it just really felt like a place where the story should have ended. I really feel like the story in that last like third kind of gets a little wonky. Like I just said, it has places where it feels like it should be ending, but then it drags on like an extra hour or two. And that's not horrible, because in my opinion, I think the last half of the game I enjoyed more. Almost, I think it's because the last section of the story is a lot more action packed. The beginning of the story is very like kind of cut and dry. It's very like straightforward to the point, and there's not really a crazy amount going on. You're just kind of doing detective work, which again I'll get into. But in the last like third of the game, like, you are actually like being involved in shit physically, which wasn't really happening in the rest of the game. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I think if I had to give a score or something to the story, I'd probably give it like 7 or 8 out of 10. It was pretty decent, and I did enjoy it, but there was a lot of spots where I felt like it really could have been better in many ways. Voice crack there, sorry. But what about the gameplay? How's the gameplay? That's what makes a game good. You can have a good story, but if you have bad gameplay, people are just going to accuse you of having a very shit game. And I gotta admit, I do not like the gameplay here. And maybe that's just because I've never really played detective games before. But even so, I feel as though in a detective game you should have like, oh, you have a chance to like miss this piece of evidence, or you have a chance to miss this, and like if you grab this, then there's kind of like branching paths, and I think a good example of that is LA Noire, of like you actually have to like pay attention to what you're doing and actually do an investigation. Whereas here it just feels like you're following a quest marker to the next thing to investigate. There's no My point is there's nothing you can really miss in the detective. So it's more or less just like you're you have the story, and then you just have like the detective gameplay is more of just like a cool coat of paint they could throw on it, like, oh, it's a detective game now. And it's really just bare bones. Like, there's nothing you can miss. There's not really much investigating, it feels like there is, but it's just like it's not dynamic enough, if that's a good word for it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I don't know, the gameplay I just really didn't enjoy, and it gets to the point where, because you have in the game called a replicator, and basically you can just like recreate the entire situation as it happened, and that I thought was really cool for the first time I did it, and then you do it again and again, and you do it about 4 times, and each time is just a little bit longer. I think by like the third time, I was just so sick and tired of doing it. It was just kind of the same old song and dance. Go to this quest marker, reconstruct this situation. Go to this quest marker, reconstruct that situation. And there's nothing you can miss. You're just like looking around for a little white dot to investigate. Like, the game literally won't let you progress unless you investigate every single piece of evidence. Like, there's nothing to miss. And I think that also kind of ties into the branching paths that and multiple endings. Games have tried to do this for a while, and there's very few cases where they actually work. And this game is one of those that I just feel doesn't really work with branching paths, and like your choice matters for the end of the story. There's obviously different endings, which is good. I enjoy games that have multiple endings because that provides a sense of replayability, and I'll get to that in a second and my thoughts on that. But in the story, there's no real choices that really affect the grand outcome of the story, I feel like, besides at the very end of the story. I feel like you have to go all the way to like the last third of the game for your choices to actually matter, because I just did one playthrough, but even just thinking back to the choices that I was given, it doesn't really feel like if I had picked another option, much would have changed. And I feel like that's really big for a story like that, if that's what you're trying to go for. Like, oh, here are some choices, you know? And it's just like, the choices don't really affect much. There's a point in the game where it's weird, you are given, like, choices. Like, you're given, like, 5 dialogue choices. And, like, each of them, like, it's almost implied, like, okay, this is going to affect the story. Excuse me, that's how I feel about dialogue choices, especially nowadays. But you're given a series of choices back to back to back, and it's more or less just like how the character feels about the other character in the story. And it's so weird because it's never really brought up again. Like, you can choose how your character might feel about it, which is either he's really nice or he's just a fucking dickhead. And I that also kind of shows to how like bare bones it is, I feel like, because it's just like you can either be nice or you can be an asshole, and that's just kind of like, okay, well, there's not much difference there. You know, most people are going to choose like the decent path, you know. But after choosing all those dialogue options, nothing really changed. And I think the only thing that would change if you had chosen differently is the other dialogue options that pop up later, which obviously they don't really change much even if you did have those other dialogue options, you know. Which, after all of that, it brings me to my final point, the replay value, which is really big, because you have a game with multiple endings, but is it worth replaying? And I'm going to be 100% honest. This game is good. I enjoyed my time with it, and it's only like $25. I only paid $24 for it because it was on sale like right when it came out. So I enjoyed my purchase. I thought it was a good purchase. I had a decent time with it. I don't really regret it, but will I go back to it? Probably not. I will probably never re-download this game if I'm being 100% honest, unless like I completely forget everything about it and then like, okay, I can see myself replaying this. You know, it's been that long. But I will say, if the choices truly made like a gigantic impact, I feel like this is a bit of an unfair comparison, but like The Witcher 3, for example. I've been replaying The Witcher 3 lately, and like in there, your choices do matter. Like you can have many different outcomes to like side stories and the main story. And it's like that provides like replay value, or something like Black Ops 2 where it's like you could have like many different endings and outcomes to the story. You know, it's just like those moments that provide the replay value, and the gameplay especially with this game, I feel like it's just so poor. It's just so like by the books and bare bones. It's just, if I will say, if there was like a chapter select, because the game is broken up into chapters, if there was a chapter select, I'd definitely re-download it and like try to get a different ending or something like that. But there just isn't. And the main thing that like I don't want to have to go through again is the gameplay, because the gameplay is just so mind-numbing, and it gets so boring so quick. Like crack can only be it. I think the best way I've heard it described is it's like Cyberpunk brain dances on crack, but the crack gets old really fucking quick. And I think that is the best way I've ever heard this game described, because that is what it's like. Like, it's really fucking cool the first time you do it, second time you do it, but then every time after you're just kind of like, okay, this is kind of boring. And the same goes for the brain dances. Same goes for the brain dances in Cyberpunk. Like, you do the brain dances like 2-3 times, and then it's just like, okay, this is, my voice fucking cracked again, god damn it. But you know, you do it a couple times, and then it's like, alright, well, this is just kind of old. And then every time you replay the game, the brain dances are the parts that you dread. But all in all, for a company's very first game, I think this is pretty fucking good. I think it's pretty decent. It really lacks replay value, and I think the story really teeters at many points. But if it ever goes on sale again, or hell, even if it's only $25. I mean, with tax, that's like $26. You gotta pay the tax, obviously. Don't evade taxes. But even like with that price tag, I do think it's worth a purchase, especially if you are like a fan of like the noir detective scene. I think it's a good purchase, and it's about like 6-7 hours long. There's not really much side anything to do, so yeah, it's a pretty good game. Again, it just falls off at a lot of points, and it struggles in a lot of areas, but for a company's first game, it's kind of par for the course, I'd suppose. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what else they produce, because again, first project, this is really fucking high quality. It's just lacking in areas, and yeah, that's about it. Hope you all take it easy.